We are here from NLPindia.com talking to Mark Andreas from the Andreas NLP training. So Mark, welcome to this particular interview.
Thank you, Krish. It's great to be here.
So I'd like to tell you that most people in India are very excited that you're coming, and we're looking forward to seeing how it would be like to have one of the Andreas family come here. NLP is a very upcoming field in India, and thanks to Father Dick McHugh, who brought NLP to India in 1992, he would always make it a point to mention the contribution of both your parents to NLP, and he was always very keen and make most people understand what kind of contribution your parents have done. So we're very happy that you're coming.
I'm really happy to be coming too, yeah.
So could you just tell us, how did this idea for this trip to India, how did this originate?
Well, it originated with Deepa Somani. She has been a colleague and a friend and has come to some of our trainings here in Boulder. And she's hosted my mother, Connirae, for her wholeness training in Houston. And she was the instigator. She was excited to bring me to teach core transformation in India. And so she got the ball rolling, and then the excitement that built from there was really great to see, and just all the people, you and others, that are coming together to make it happen. So it's really exciting.
So is this the first time that the Andreases are doing something in India, or have you done anything in India before this?
This will be the first time, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I believe you're doing 3 programs, and one is in Mumbai, the first when you land, and the second one is in Bangalore, and the third one is in Chennai.
Yeah, that's right.
So Bhavna is taking care of the enrollments there in Bombay, and Ramchandra Bandekar is taking care of enrollments in Bangalore, and Sampurna is taking care of the enrollments in Chennai.
Yep. Yeah.
What is the kind of people that get attracted to core transformation in your experience?
Well, in my experience, one of the unique things about this training is that it's first and foremost oriented towards personal transformation. So it's oriented towards anyone who wants to get personal change in their own lives. And you don't need any experience whatsoever. So I find that there are two types of people that come to the training. Some are people who have had no experience in NLP or anything else, and they're coming, they just want their own personal change. And other people may also be wanting their personal change, but they may also be wanting to use this in their client work, or if they're a coach or therapist. And so we find that this is actually the best way to teach the process, also for those who want to use it with their clients or help friends or others achieve their goals.
How long has core transformation been there? And would you just, I'm sure we have another interview with your mother later, but do you have any memories or anecdotes about how it originated to start with?
Oh, yeah, I could tell a story about how it originated. Initially, so it was developed by my mother, Connirae, and of course, she had her own experience teaching NLP. She was teaching NLP with my father, and she was seeing other people get a lot of wonderful results from these NLP processes, and yet she was experiencing that she wasn't, sometimes she would get a useful result here or there, but with some of her, what she would consider her more important issues, she wasn't noticing the changes that she was wanting. And so that motivated her to look for something where she could get the change that she wanted. And so she first began by inviting other people who had maybe their big issue that nothing had worked with. And they'd tried lots of other NLP techniques and nothing had worked to get the change they wanted. She invited them to come and work with her. And she said, we'll work together. I don't know what we'll do, but whatever it is, it'll be nothing that I've tried before. And she just explored, and of course, drawing on her NLP background, that was the initial stages of developing core transformation. And then once she had something that was working for these other people, then she began using it with herself and finding benefits with herself.
Okay. So could you share with us as to why you became a trainer, and particularly an NLP trainer, and later why you've chosen to be a co-transformation trainer?
Sure, yeah. So initially, when I was in college and just out of college, I didn't know necessarily that I would go into the same field as my parents in teaching and coaching with NLP and core transformation. And but I was always interested in conflict resolution, whether that's between communities or internal conflict resolution, which of course, one way of looking at personal change is that it's all some sort of internal conflict resolution that's happening. And so in college, I studied peace and global studies, which is all about, how we can get along and transform conflict on a global scale, or at least a societal scale or community scale. And then when I graduated, I worked for 2 years in a wilderness therapy program. So I was backpacking, leading groups of 8 kids around the woods, teaching them how to camp, and being sort of unofficial mediator and therapist and parent for these kids that were in this program that they didn't want to be in. They were sent there because there were such a difference of conflict between them and their parents that their parents said, "Here, you take my kid. I don't know what to do. Let's hope this can solve things." And so in that, I got a lot more experience of conflicts and interpersonal dynamics and of course the personal struggles that each of these teens was going through, whether it was drug addiction or lying or mistrust, or a wide range of different issues that kids would come to this program for. And so then after that was when I was drawn to go into NLP full-time as a practice and work with coaching one-on-one with individuals and teaching. And core transformation was one of the methods that I was drawn to because of, for 2 reasons. One is that it works at a very deep level and can be applied to a wide range of different issues. So some NLP tools are wonderful if you have a phobia, or if you have a grief, or if you're wanting to, have a specific goal like stop smoking. But they aren't necessarily useful for other issues. And so one of the great things about core transformation is that it's a model that works at a level where it can be valuable in getting this internal conflict resolution to happen on a wide range of different issues. Basically, any feeling, behavior, or thought that you want to change is a perfect candidate for this process. And so I found it not only a deep process and one that got some of the best results, both with myself and with clients, but also a process that could be applied to a wide range of different contexts or life issues.
Mark, could you share 2 things? One, in terms of and self-application of core transformation in an area of your life where it made a huge difference, and a person with whom you did core transformation and it made a remarkable difference in their life. Could you share 2 such experiences?
Yeah, of course. So one example, and there are quite a lot at this point, and it goes differently for different people. But one example that I like to share that was particularly impactful was somebody that I worked with quite a while ago now. And this person had a traumatic experience earlier in life. And that led to certain fears manifesting in her life in the present, even though that had happened 20 years ago. And so, and this was like a big deal. She'd be very anxious and fearful in these particular contexts that would trigger this. And so we worked with this process, and after that, that totally transformed. And those situations where those fears used to come up no longer were a problem for her. She could be calm and relaxed and just enjoying her life in those situations that used to trigger that. And not only that, so she got that goal that she wanted, but she was also surprised to discover that in another relationship, she got a whole lot of improvement in a relationship that had been, this wasn't with her husband, but with somebody else. It was a relationship where there had been a lot of conflict and discord, and she noticed that that actually got much easier for her as well, even though she didn't think that was related in any way to what we were working with. So sometimes there can even be those other changes that happen in our lives that we don't even expect to get. They may not be what we're going for specifically. Mm-hmm. And as far as an anecdote with myself, one interesting story that I like to share, because often, sometimes people say, well, how do I know I'm not just sort of making this whole thing up, and I'm not actually getting, accessing my experience, my true experience. And a story that I like to share to make people feel better when they're wondering this is, when I was teaching core transformation in the beginning days, beginning days for myself, at one point we didn't have enough time to do an actual demonstration with somebody from the group, which would have been my preference, to work with something real. And so since we had the shortened time, I just made up a problem that I didn't have, and my colleague who is presenting with me guided me through the process, and I just made up all of the answers. And so I think it was maybe like I wanted to stop smoking or something. So I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. And so I just made up the problem, made up the answers, and she guided me through the process quite quickly. And interestingly, after that experience, I actually had my most profound experience with the process. And, so I left that presentation just feeling wonderful. And that was really interesting to me, because I certainly didn't expect to get any benefits myself, since I had made the whole thing up. And so that's just kind of a amusing anecdote, but also something to realize is that you can get benefits from this process even if you make up your problem. The lesson that I took from that is that it's, in a certain sense, it's not possible to make up anything. Everything is coming from our experience in some way. And so even though I didn't have, a smoking problem, all of the answers that I was quote making up were coming from my own experience. That's part of me. And so values to be gained regardless, either way.
Mark, how long have you been teaching core transformation, and could you share with us which are the different countries to where you've gone and taught core transformation?
Sure. So I think I've been teaching core transformation, let's see, I'd have to do the math a little bit. I believe it's been about 6 years that I've been teaching core transformation in a training context. And I've been using it longer than that, more like 8 years with my clients. And so far, I've taught core transformation in multiple states in the US. As far as abroad, I've taught it so far in Portugal, in the Netherlands, and just recently in Romania.
I'd like to know that for people who have signed up and who are excited and are going to, we have, I think, a countdown till November and December before these programs start in these 3 cities. Are there any specific pointers, preparation, planning, or anything you'd like to tell to these participants who are going to come so that they can better their experience and get more out of the training?
Sure. So the first thing I like to say is you don't need to do anything to make full benefit of the training. So the training's organized there's no background experience necessary for the training. So some people like to just show up fresh and just discover what they discover in the moment. And for those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more about the process, that's an option also, and it's certainly not required. So it just depends on your learning style. And if you're the kind of person who wants to read up a little bit ahead of time or or learn a little bit ahead of time, then there's the book Core Transformation, which you can get on Amazon online. And there's also a little free webinar introduction on coretransformation.org. That's a nice intro that my aunt Tamara did, working with some people and some questions people asked. So those are options. And that said, some people like to just come totally fresh without any preconceived notions or understandings and just sort of show up and have the experience there firsthand. So that's also a wonderful way to do it if you are that type of person.
I hope you know we have a small audience that's watching our interview. So I've got some questions from the audience, which I'd like to read out and ask you.
Yeah.
So somebody would like to know, is language a barrier for co-transformation? Like, for example, if the person's mother tongue is not English, is it a barrier? Or if they didn't know English, is it a barrier?
I would say there's nothing that doesn't translate into another language. So once you understand, so it depends on how fluent you are. You know, obviously if it's being taught in English and you're not very fluent in English, then that's going to take a little bit longer just to get the understandings of what's meant with the process. So yeah, it just depends on your fluency with the language in terms of understanding the process. But once you understand what the process is, it can be done in any language. It's not language specific.
While many of us have been exposed to co-transformation, there's one very unique exercise that is there as part of this particular program, which is the aligning perceptual position. And I've had to tell most people that this is a technique that most of us are completely unaware of in India. So could you speak about that and why it's an important part of the program that you're offering?
Yeah, great. I'm glad you asked about that. Aligning perceptual positions process is a whole other model, and it's in particular a model of relationships. So it's particularly valuable in gaining clarity and resources in our relationships. So if there's a relationship, whether that's a romantic relationship or just, you know, a relationship with my mother or father, or with my son or daughter, or a friend or a colleague at work that I'm having difficulty with, aligning perceptual positions is a wonderful way to bring in resources and clarity to that relationship. And one of the reasons, as far as your question of why it's included in the core transformation training, one of the reasons we include it is that it tends to be very complementary to core transformation. So often people for whom core transformation may be initially a little bit more of a challenge, aligning perceptual positions is easy, and vice versa. So they tend to be processes that are complementary to each other.
Wonderful, wonderful, Mark. And I think for the sake of brevity, we'd like to bring the interview to an end, and we'll expose more of Mark Andreas to people when he comes to India finally.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks so much for the interview.
Thank you so much, Mark, for coming on the interview and joining us on short notice. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Krish.
See you soon.